If the camera wasn't recording, you'd never believe what this dog did. A father demanded their German Shepherd be removed that very day. A mother proposed one final test. They placed a camera in the living room for just 10 minutes, and what it revealed shattered everything they thought they knew. The baby was reaching out. The dog was still. And when the vacuum appeared, the truth exploded into focus. Before we continue, hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss stories like this, and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from and what you think about protective pets. The afternoon erupted into chaos again. "I'm not discussing this anymore, Delphina." Joel's fist crashed against the kitchen counter, rattling the coffee cups. "Max is leaving today. The shelter's already expecting my call. That dog watches Lanny like she's prey, and I won't wait for tragedy to prove me right." Delphina shifted Lanny higher on her hip, the baby wearing her yellow onesie with the tiny ducks printed along the collar. Her voice came out steady despite the tremor beneath. "You're wrong about him, Joel. Max has been part of this family since before Lanny was born. He's protective, not predatory." "Protective?" Joel's laugh came out harsh and bitter. "That animal is 90 pounds of muscle and teeth. I've seen the way he circles her crib, the way he positions himself every time one of us picks her up. It's not natural, Delphina. Something's going to happen, and when it does, then prove it." Delphina's interruption cut through his rising panic. "You want me to believe Max is dangerous? Fine. Let's set up the camera right now. 10 minutes. We leave Lanny on the living room floor with Max and watch what happens. If you're right, we'll see it. But if you're wrong—" She paused, her eyes locked on his. "If you're wrong, Joel, you admit it, and Max stays." Joel's jaw tightened. His certainty felt unshakable. 10 minutes. But when that footage shows me what I already know, don't expect me to apologize for protecting our daughter." They moved quickly. Joel positioned the camera on the bookshelf, angling it to capture the entire living room. Delphina gently placed Lanny on the soft, cream-colored rug, surrounding her with plush toys. Max, who had been lying near the fireplace, lifted his massive head, amber eyes tracking every movement. The camera's red light blinked on. 10 minutes started now. Both parents stepped back into the kitchen doorway, just out of frame. Joel pulled up the live feed on his phone, his thumb hovering over the screen. Delphina stood beside him, arms crossed, her heart pounding. In the living room, Lanny gurgled happily, reaching toward a stuffed elephant. Max remained motionless, his dark eyes fixed on the infant with an intensity that made Joel's stomach clench. "See?" Joel whispered. "Look at how he's staring at her." Delphina said nothing. She just watched and waited for the truth to reveal itself. The first minute crawled by in suffocating silence. On the screen, Max remained where he'd been since they set Lanny down, stretched out near the fireplace, his massive body relaxed against the hardwood floor. His head rested on his paws, but his eyes never left the baby. Lanny, oblivious to being the center of a test that could determine Max's fate, babbled happily as she grabbed at the stuffed elephant beside her. "Look at that," Joel whispered, his voice tight. "He hasn't moved. He's just staring." Delphina leaned closer to the phone screen. "He's watching her, Joel. There's a difference." "Watching? That's what predators do before they—" "Stop." Delphina's hand touched his arm. "Just watch. Really, watch." On screen, Lanny managed to pull herself onto her side, giggling at her own accomplishment. The sudden movement made Max's ears perk up instantly. His head lifted slightly, muscles tensing as if ready to spring into action. Joel's breath caught in his throat. "See? There, he's about to—" But Max didn't lunge, didn't bare his teeth. Instead, his tail gave a single gentle thump against the floor. When Lanny settled back down, reaching her tiny hands toward him, Max's posture softened again. He watched her with those intense amber eyes, but there was something in his expression Joel couldn't quite name. Not hunger, not aggression, vigilance. "He's been like this since she was born," Delphina said quietly. "Always watching, always aware. Do you remember the first night we brought her home? You were so exhausted you nearly dropped the car seat. Max was there, Joel, right there, like he knew she needed protecting." Joel wanted to argue, but the words stuck in his throat. On the screen, Lanny had managed to grab her elephant and was now waving it in Max's direction, her delighted squeals filling the living room. Max's ears swiveled toward the sound, and for just a moment, his mouth opened in what almost looked like a smile. 3 minutes had passed. "His focus is unnatural," Joel insisted, though his voice had lost some of its conviction. "Dogs don't stare like that unless they care," Delphina finished. "Unless they're doing exactly what you think you're doing, protecting someone they love." Joel said nothing. He couldn't tear his eyes from the screen, watching as Max shifted slightly, repositioning himself so he had a better view of both Lanny and the hallway entrance. The dog's head turned at every small sound, the hum of the refrigerator, the creak of the house settling, the distant sound of a car passing outside. Always alert, always aware. 4 minutes down, 6 to go. And then from somewhere in the house came the soft whirring sound that would change everything. The automated vacuum cleaner rolled into view at the living room entrance, its sensors blinking as it began its programmed route across the floor. Max's entire body went rigid. "Oh, God," Joel breathed, his knuckles white around his phone. The vacuum. Delphina's eyes widened. She knew the history. 3 months ago, Max had gotten his fur caught in the vacuum's brushes. It took 20 minutes to free him, and ever since, he'd fled to another room the moment they turned it on. The big, brave German Shepherd was terrified of that small machine. On screen, the vacuum hummed forward, its path taking it directly toward the spot where Lanny played with her elephant. The baby, fascinated by the new moving object, dropped her toy and clapped her hands together. Max's ears flattened against his skull, his muscles coiled, but he didn't run. "He's going to bolt," Joel said, but there was uncertainty in his voice now. "He always runs from that thing." The vacuum rolled closer. 5 feet from Lanny, then 4. Max rose to his feet in one fluid motion, but instead of backing away toward the hallway, he moved forward. He placed himself directly between the vacuum and the baby, his body lowering into a stance Joel had never seen before. Protective, defensive. A low growl rumbled from deep in Max's chest. "What is he doing?" Joel's voice barely registered above a whisper. His certainty from minutes ago was crumbling. This wasn't the behavior of a dog waiting to attack. This was... "He's protecting her," Delphina said, tears already forming in her eyes. "Joel, he's protecting her from the thing he's most afraid of." The vacuum continued its mindless path forward, its sensors unable to detect the 70-pound obstacle, now blocking its route. 3 feet away. 2 feet. Max's growl intensified. His body pressed low to the ground, every muscle tensed and ready, but he didn't retreat, didn't flinch. The vacuum bumped gently against Max's front paw. Max didn't move an inch. He absorbed the contact, his body a living barrier between the machine and Lanny. The growl that emerged from him now was deeper, more insistent, a warning that said not 1 inch closer. Behind them, in the kitchen, Joel felt something crack inside his chest. The dog he'd accused of being dangerous, the animal he'd been ready to send away, was standing his ground against his own fear. For Lanny. "I was wrong," Joel whispered, but even as the words left his mouth, he knew the footage hadn't finished revealing its truth. The vacuum's wheels spun against Max's immovable form, and then it happened. Max lunged. The bark that erupted from him was sharp, commanding. Nothing like the fearful yelps he'd made when caught in the vacuum months before. This was the bark of a guardian issuing a final warning. The vacuum's sensors, designed to detect obstacles, went haywire at the sudden aggressive movement. It jerked backward, its wheels reversing, the friendly robotic voice stuttering, obstacle detected, rerouting. Lanny squealed with delight at the commotion, thinking it was all a game. She bounced on her bottom, clapping her hands at the dancing vacuum and the big dog who had become part of the entertainment. But Max wasn't playing. He advanced as the vacuum retreated, his body still positioned protectively between it and Lanny. When the vacuum tried to angle around him, seeking a new path, Max moved with it, blocking every attempt. His bark came again, sharp, authoritative, unmistakable in its message. Turn around and leave. In the kitchen, Joel stood frozen, the phone trembling in his hands. He's herding it away from her, Joel's voice cracked on the words. Everything he'd believed about Max, every fear he'd harbored, every argument he'd made, it all disintegrated in the face of what he was witnessing. He's terrified of that thing, but he's choosing her, Delphina finished softly. He's choosing her over his own fear. The vacuum, thoroughly confused by the large obstacle, refusing to let it pass, finally gave up on its original route. It rotated and began rolling back towards the hallway from which it came. Max followed it for several feet, ensuring it was truly leaving, his body still tense and alert. Only when the vacuum disappeared around the corner did Max's posture begin to relax. The guilt hit Joel like a physical blow. How many times had Max shown this same protective instinct, and he'd interpreted it as aggression? How many moments of loyalty had he mistaken for threat? The dog he'd called the shelter about, the animal he'd been ready to rip from his family, had just proven himself in the most undeniable way possible. "I almost sent him away," Joel whispered, his throat tight. "Delphina, I almost—" "But you didn't." Her hand found his, squeezing gently. "And now you know." On the screen, Max walked slowly back to Lanny, his movements careful and measured. The baby, still giggling, reached up toward him with both arms, and what Max did next would dissolve the last of Joel's resistance entirely. 7 minutes had passed. The truth had been revealed in less than half the time they'd allotted. Max lowered himself beside Lanny with the gentleness of a creature who understood exactly how fragile she was. His massive head came to rest on the floor, close enough that Lanny could reach him, but positioned so his body was still angled toward the hallway, still watching, still protecting. Lanny's tiny hand patted his snout, then grabbed a handful of his fur. Max didn't even flinch. Instead, his tail swept slowly across the floor, and he released a deep, contented sigh that seemed to say, "She's safe. My job is done." The baby leaned against his side, using his body as a backrest while she retrieved her stuffed elephant. Max's eyes drooped slightly, but they remained alert, scanning the room for any new threats. Delphina wiped her eyes, not bothering to hide her tears anymore. "I never doubted him, Joel, not once." Joel couldn't speak. His throat felt like it was closing around words that needed to be said, but couldn't quite form. On the screen, his daughter, safe, happy, protected, snuggled against the dog he'd condemned. The dog who'd just proven himself in ways Joel's fear-clouded judgment never allowed him to see. "Stop the recording," Joel finally managed. I need to go in there." They found Max exactly as he'd been on screen, with Lanny now dozing against his warm fur, her tiny fingers still clutching his coat. Max's eyes tracked them as they entered, but he didn't move. Wouldn't risk disturbing the sleeping child. Delphina carefully lifted Lanny, cradling her against her chest. "You did good, Max," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You're such a good boy." Joel knelt down slowly, his hand hovering above Max's head before finally making contact. The dog's amber eyes met his, and Joel saw no resentment there, no judgment for the father who'd been ready to abandon him, just patience, loyalty, trust that Joel would eventually understand. "I'm sorry, buddy." Joel's voice broke completely. "I was wrong about you, so wrong. You're not going anywhere, you hear me? You're staying, forever." Max's tail thumped against the floor, once, twice, 3 times. That night, after Lanny had been fed and changed and put down in her crib, Max took up his usual position outside the nursery door. But this time, Joel didn't see a threat lurking in the shadows. He saw a guardian keeping watch, a protector who'd proven beyond any doubt that he understood his purpose in this family. Joel sat down beside him in the hallway, his back against the wall, and rested his hand on Max's head. "Thank you," he whispered into the darkness. "Thank you for being better than I deserved." Inside the nursery, Lanny slept peacefully, protected by 2 fathers who would give anything to keep her safe. One who'd finally learned to see clearly, and one who'd never needed to learn at all.